Okay, we're good.
Okay, hi everybody. We are here live with Jason Eisberg to discuss Thriller 25, the book. Welcome everybody. It's lovely to see you again for our spring edition of Live Author Chat at the Michael Jackson Book Club. This is the book that we're going to be discussing today, this beautiful book. And just a brief on it. It was a book that was published first in 2008. I think there were a few other editions after that, maybe the last one in 2011, maybe. And it's a book to mark the anniversary, the 25th anniversary of the Thriller album, the biggest selling album of all time. And it's also a significant book because it was the last book that Michael worked on, approved before his passing a year later in 2009. So Emma and I would love to welcome Jason, who worked on the book, to talk to us tonight all about it. We're going to find out lots and lots. Thank you for being with us here today, Jason.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
The first thing we want to get into is kind of the idea of how the book was brought about, really. Do you know where the idea, the concept for the book originated? Was it Michael, or was it the Sony marketing team, or was it from somewhere else?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the book was entirely Michael's vision from soup to nut. There wasn't any pushback or anything like that from Sony or anything like that. And there was this kind of notion that Michael, I think, took a backseat to his career the last few years of his life leading up to This Is It. And the truth is, with the book, he was very involved. I'm sure we'll get into that later, but he was really involved with everything, every aspect of the book, from the layout of it to even things like the quality of the paper that were on the book. So he definitely had total control, and it was something that he was really passionate about. And it was definitely his baby, so to speak.
Right. Wow. So how did it get started? How did if it was Michael's idea to begin with, how did he get his team together? What happened?
I don't really know specifically what led to him, what the process was. I just know that for him, it was something that he wanted to do. And I had a mutual friend with David Guest. Him and I shared a mutual friend, and they were my connection to actually working for Michael. And so before the book, I'd done some work on an official calendar of Michael's, and this was just kind of the next step from that. There was also another book. It was called My World or My Photo World. I can't remember the title of it. And there were a lot of photos in it that were official photos. The quality wasn't to par with what Michael wanted, but it was kind of like just kind of a vision of what was possible for the future as far as those things went. And then with the Thriller book, it was just full stop.
Yeah. Okay. And most web-based records for this book list Michael himself as the author, but because Michael Jackson and Thriller are synonymous, it isn't entirely clear for the reader whether he was explicitly the author. In the back, he gives thanks to you, Richard Lecoq, who he interviewed in January about his amazing book, All the Songs, and Lotfi, I think that's how you pronounce it, who Richard tells us did the promo for the book that we've been looking at this week on the book club. And numerous others were thanked as well. How did you become involved, and what was your specific role in the production of the book?
Okay, so I did all kinds of things for the book. I edited a lot of the pages for it as far as the text. I helped with some of the interviews in the book. Probably what I'm most proud of is I designed the bookmarks that came with the first edition of the book. Those were actually my idea. I helped with a lot of the layout stuff. I had my hand in a lot of different aspects of it. And it's weird for me to say that because, I mean, I was a Michael Jackson fan. I've been a Michael Jackson fan since I was 8 years old. And at that point, I was in my early 20s, and it was really unbelievable to be having my hand in that kind of thing. And at the direction of, literally what I was doing, it was Michael was the one that was saying, well, I don't like this, or you're doing too much. And it was really just, it was an incredible time in my life, and it was really unbelievable for me. I had to pinch myself sometimes to make sure it was real, you know?
Well, I can't even imagine. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so when we read the text, was that done by a specific person? Did Michael write it? What about the text?
So the text in the book, it was written by myself and some other people, and the one who approved it all. And he would actually go through and make changes. Because sometimes this is going to sound kind of silly, but sometimes I would get kind of into the text because I mean I have aspirations to be an author one day, so I'd kind of take things to an extreme, and then it'd be like there'd be an extra page added on of text. And I remember I got some notes back from some of the changes I made, and they were from Michael, and it was like, you're doing too much, scale it back. And I was like, oh, you know, so like, because he had a certain agenda of things he wanted, things that were popular about like promoting thriller more recently in 2008. He was real adamant he wanted that stuff in there too. So there was a high order of things he wanted, like interviews and even like with the questions, it was we got to pick some of the questions out, but some of those were directly from him because he wanted. It's like he knew the answers, so to speak, or what he was hoping the answers would be, and so it's like he kind of guided those questions too. So he really had his hand in a lot of that book.
Wow, that's fascinating and so satisfying to hear that, having read it through and imagined, you know, what part he was playing in the production of it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Emma, do you have some questions that you wanted to ask?
I do, yes. So, listen, it's really amazing to hear you talk about going from this kind of child fan into essentially Michael becoming your boss for this book. Like, it's completely mind-blowing. Can you talk to us about the first time you met Michael and kind of what that experience was like? Because obviously that's something that we all dream about. So, and we love to hear those stories from people who've actually been in his presence.
Sure. So I first worked for Michael in 2006 or 2007 on, it was one of the official calendars. David Guest, rest in peace. Him and myself had a mutual friend, and I asked him at one point, I said, could you ask David if I could somehow work for Michael Jackson? I mean, that had been something I wanted to do since like school career day when I was like 8 or 9, and they'd ask like, what's your dream job? And I'd be like, well, I either want to be a rock star or work for Michael Jackson. And like, so I was really serious about doing that, and they'd kind of look at me and laugh, but I really wanted that for my life. So, and he really inspired me to a lot of things I wanted to do. And the thing is that he put me in the path of being creative. And so as far as how I got to work for him, the person I knew who knew David Guest, he put me in touch with David directly, and David told me, like David said, send me an email just letting me know why Michael inspired you, and just a bit about what you're doing in your life right now. And so I did that, and I wasn't sure what was going to come of it, but I mentioned that I was working on an English degree and that I'd liked Michael since I was 8 years old. I learned to play the bass guitar so I could learn the bass line to Billie Jean. I mean, and I just put it all out there. And so he got my letter, and it's like he couldn't have been more generous. Just like step back for a moment, like what other pop star, I mean, and let's be honest, icon really has their fans work for them. I mean, he knew the direction my life was going at that point, and I had the opportunity to edit the text on a calendar. And some people hear that and they go, well, what text is there in a calendar? Were you checking typos in the months of the year, like 12 words? How hard could that be? But it was a lot more than that. It was the text on the front and back, the promotional text with it, proofing the calendar. There was a lot of stuff involved. And so my thought from there was, this can either be the coolest thing I ever get to do for the rest of my life. I could say, hey, I edited the text for this Michael Jackson calendar. Or I could try to use that as a jumping off point to do more. So I said, would it be possible that I could do more of this? And shortly after that, the opportunity to help with the book was presented, and I was thrilled. Like I that's the only word I can use to describe it. I was super thrilled, and Michael could not have been more generous, really.
Yeah. I mean, you hear from so many people who've worked with him just how he's so encouraged everyone he came into contact with, but particularly people who work with him. He just really encouraged that creative side to come out. He inspired people. He, just really, just kind of forced that creativity out of people, and whatever he could do, like you say, he was this huge superstar, and yet he so cared about bringing this out of other people. That was just part of, I guess, what he wanted to achieve, as well as kind of all his success, was to have that imprint on other people's lives and their success, and to give people that opportunity. So what was the time period that you and Michael worked? Oh, sorry, Jason, go on.
Oh, sorry. I just want to say one more thing too. A lot of people do say there were a lot of like shady people around Michael, especially the later years of his life. And, that may have been true to some extent, but Michael had a lot of people that really tried to protect him from people that would take advantage of him. And so it was really like, I get goosebumps thinking about this now, but the people that allowed me to come in contact with Michael and work for him for the years I did, it was really like I had to prove myself up front that I had that I wasn't just trying to get money or notoriety from this, and that there was like as David Guest asked me, like, show me like why this is important to you, because it was a random thing. Like I knew we had a mutual friend, and I mean David Guest had produced stuff for Michael in the past, but I mean I didn't really have a jumping off point for that other than I was a fan. So and that really stood out to me in a good way. Like at least there were some people that really looked out for him. I tried to.
Yeah, that is nice to know, because you do hear about, the kind of snakes and stuff a little bit too often. So I think it's nice to have that reassurance that he did have good people who had his best interest at heart,
Yeah.
So what was the time period that you and Michael worked together?
Well, I worked for Michael from 2006 to 2007. I want to say 2006 until he passed away. And for most of that, it was when he was in Las Vegas in 2007, 2008. But for some of that, he was in different parts of the country and even the world. And the book itself, that mostly picked up steam in 2007 and 2008. I think the book, I mean, the only way I can really describe it is to say I think the book would be best described to say it was in phases. So the first edition, it came out and it had like, I'm gonna nerd out with you guys here for a minute. So this is the first edition, Michael signed mine, but
wow.
So like
beautiful.
It came with this like thing here, and then I think it's in here still. I don't know if I took it out. Like here was the bookmark that I'm really still proud of, right? And so the second edition that came out, it was just this book, like it was just like this, and it didn't have the bookmark or the shell cover thing, but it was pretty much this. And every time the book would get a re-release, we would go in and we would proof text, and even Michael would make notes of like typos and things like that. So if you have the first one and you have the second one and you compare them, there are some differences even with the layout and even with some of the image quality. Michael was really particular about that. And then there was this one, which is really rare, which right before Michael passed away, and it was going to get another printing. If you compare these like side by side, you can see that like this one's a bit more glossy. I don't know if you can notice that. That was something that Michael wanted to. He said, I really want the cover to be more shiny and it like get the images to be more shiny within the book. So that was something. There was a company in Japan, I think, that helped do this. And then this got like a real limited release. I think it was in Japan. The book's still in English, but it was very limited. So these are really hard to find, but and that was all at Michael's instruction, like what he wanted for the book. So there was, I think there was only 3 editions of it made, but I could be wrong. There might have been more than that, and I missed track of some, but it did seem like every time there was a new one, it was like these are the things that need to be fixed. So
I think I've seen the first edition recently on Amazon for just like an extortionate amount, like £400 or something for that first edition, and it's of course really hard to get hold of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't really keep track of that. I have some, but I mean it's really no different. Like as I'm sitting here looking at it, you're really like, if you just want a copy of it, you'd really just be paying a lot more money for like a piece of cardboard. So I mean, if you're like a completionist or whatever, but honestly, the one without it, it's going to have the more current text and the more current layout. So and I think it fluctuates on eBay. I know after Michael passed, there was everything like insane amounts of money, some of this stuff. So I don't really keep track of that. Maybe I should.
Yeah.
In the chat right now, people are fessing up to what version they've got. We've got
Nice.
some with the glossy.
Ooh.
We have we have some with the glossy. That seems to be quite popular. Someone else is saying that we're all nerds, which is true, but we're proud. Nerds. Yeah, so I think the people have the glossy version.
Nice.
Is that the Japanese edition then?
I think so. I don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure if I remember right. I mean, this is like more than 10 years now, but if I remember right, I want to say that those were made in Japan and they were released in Japan, but I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. And Tammy's seen one at Thrift Books for $1,000.
Oh my gosh, that's ridiculous.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, and Shari did a post. One of our moderators, Shari, did a post. She's here too. A couple of weeks back about it. Before we announced this interview, she was like raving about the one she'd battled for on eBay. I think she's really proud. That's a glossy one too. My one's the middle edition. I've got the duller copy. But it was sealed, but I opened it. Obviously, I'm not going to leave a book unsealed, but at least I got a sealed copy. That was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Nerd talk over. Emma, shall I go?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Before we leave the bit about you working with Michael, like for the first time, as you were a fan from age 8.
Mm-hmm.
And you were working with him like in a professional manner, not meeting him as well. First of all, rewind. Had you met him as a fan before?
So I went to Michael's trial in 2005 when I was 20. And so the way the trial worked was they had a lottery every day. And it was for people to come in and see. And the court was really particular about who could come in. Like if you were wearing Michael Jackson anything, you couldn't be allowed in. And then if you got in and you tried to talk to him or run up and kind of like profess your love for him or whatever, they would throw you out and they would ban you from coming back. And I think, and there was a fan who was really passionate about Michael. His first name was BJ, but I can't remember his last name. And he was there every day, bless his heart. And he tried to like talk to Michael one day and they saw that and then he wasn't allowed in. Oh. And they didn't want fans to like taint the jury as far as like their adoration for him, I guess. But, and funny side story about that is I happened to see Diane Dimond there one day and I was sitting at the end on I don't know what you'd call it, like a bench, I guess. And like where they had like people that could watch the trial for the day or whatever. And I saw her coming and I'm going to say I'm not proud of this, but I guess I am. I stuck my foot out when I saw her walking and she tripped and she kind of fell to her knees a little bit. And she looked back at me and I smiled and I was really pleased. So it just made me real happy. So and like some fans would wear Michael Jackson stuff under their clothes because you could see like if they wore a jacket and they'd zip it up, like sometimes they'd zip their coat down. And me being a diehard fan, like I'd be like, oh, I know what you're wearing. Like I see that. But as long as the people in the court didn't notice, I think it was okay. But so I did that and I got to meet Frank DeLeo there. He was really nice. Michael's brother, Randy. and J. Randy Taraborelli, who for me, like, I mean, probably from the time I was 10 till 13 or 14, that book was like, I carried it around, his biography about Michael Jackson. I carried that book and Moonwalk around like everywhere I went.
Yeah.
And like if I'd go on a trip with my family or anything like that. So, and meeting him, and he really, I don't know if it was necessarily apparent like when he was doing his reporting of the trial, but he really felt bad for Michael, and Aphrodite Jones was there. There were tons of people now that I think the fans are probably a lot more familiar with, but so that was my first experience as a fan. And then it was at that time that like you see Michael from afar and you're like, he's this incredible person that you respect his talent, but you kind of forget he's a real person. And so in that moment I was like, I'd really like to, I used to joke when I was younger, I want to work for him, but now I'm like, this might somehow come to pass if I really wanted to. So I just tried to, I tried to make that happen any way I could when I left there. And I didn't feel like anybody I met there, I didn't feel like I knew them well enough to ask that. Like, could I work for Michael Jackson? Could I meet him? Like, I just didn't feel like that was the right thing to do, but it ended up happening anyways. So I think if you want something bad enough, you can definitely make it happen somehow. You might not necessarily know how it's going to happen, but I think it can for sure.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you did, and that's wonderful. And what was it like then meeting him face to face after all those years of having him in your universe? What was that like?
One of the things that meant a lot to me then, but after he passed, it meant a lot more to me. It was the first thing that he ever gave me, and it was and I told him, I said my absolute favorite music video is the Scream music video, and so it was this signed poster from the Scream video, and he wrote, "To Jason, my love is always with you," and it just meant the world to me, because that was something that, like, I mean, there's no other person that I admired more, especially growing up, and so to know that A, he knew who I was, and B, that he cared enough to take the time to have me in his world in some capacity, just, it blew me away. And then after he was gone, things like that just meant a whole lot more to me.
Yeah.
You know, so,
and
before I forget too, there was an official poster that came out in 2008. And so you can probably Google the images, but if any of the fans watching this want, they can add me on Facebook. I don't mind. Just like let me know that, you know, that's how you're coming to know me, in case I don't recognize you or see that you're a Michael Jackson fan. But there was a poster that came out in 2008, and it was for promoting Thriller 25, but it had an image of Michael wearing red, and it said, I think it said Thriller 25 on it. I have it in storage somewhere. And on the side, there were text of all the accolades of Thriller. It said like biggest selling album of all time, and like I think it was the number of Grammys it had won or something. And then on the poster I had, Michael added, and I can share an image of it. I'd have to find it, but Michael added on the text in like gold ink, and the greatest fans on the planet. And he really like loved his fans so much. And I'm speaking as a fan. Like I don't, that's the way I see it. So I can't think of any other artist or somebody of his notoriety that would let his fans do as much for him and be a part of his world as much as he did. I mean, even when he was in court, like Karen Faye would organize fans to meet him every day just to, because he knew they wanted to meet him. Like he was literally looking at going to jail for like the rest of his life potentially, and here he was still, even in all that, which was a whole sham if you ask me. But regardless, like here he was still trying to make fans happy. Like I can't think of anybody that does that, really.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah. And that's why we're also dedicated to him, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
I really do. I believe that.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So I think while we were all chatting then, Richard Lecoq joined the live chat. He's watching. So hi, Richard. Thank you for being here. So I'm going to go into another question now. It's about the actual putting together of the book. So were you with Michael side by side doing some of the parts, or was it mainly on the phone, that sort of thing? Did you go to his house?
Yeah, it was a lot of working remotely. Michael was in Vegas for some of that, but for a lot of it, it was working remotely and then getting it approved and going back. And there were phone calls and things like making changes. It was kind of challenging because at that point in my life, I was doing it was time management, because in 2008 I was in grad school and here I was working on this book and I was wearing a lot of different hats, and I was just trying to figure out, how do I manage this stuff, because I want both these things in my life at the same time and I'm not willing to let go of either of these. So I just tried to juggle as best I could in the beginning, but once I got a flow for it, it became a lot easier. And I'd always look forward to getting to do more on the book. Like, the more responsibility I got to do, the happier I was, honestly, just because I knew that I would take it really seriously. And it's not that I didn't think anybody else would. I'm sure they would, but I just knew, for me, I knew that I would give it like my full focus, and I wouldn't let anything come out looking shoddy, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was a lot of phone calls of instruction of guidance, even with something like the bookmark. Like, I had submitted an original mock-up of it, and we got word that it was like, no, Michael would prefer it like this to match the cover of the Thriller 25 had like a bunch of different releases on the album itself, but he wanted it to match a certain photograph from one of the covers. So, and that was something that, came to life. And there was a great company, they're called Next Day Flyers, and they were the ones, you can Google them, and shameless plug, because they're really sweet. If you ever have graphic stuff you want done, like, they help do that. And Michael loved them. Like, I think it was really, they were going to come with the future editions of the book, but it was just a timing piece of, like, it was short notice when like the like future editions were going to come out. And so it was hard to match, because we were sourcing them from, like, the books were being printed from one place, but the bookmarks were coming from another one. And so to match them up and piece these all things together. So.
Well, you're touching on, like, my next question was, what was the most challenging part of putting this book together? And you're touching on some of it now, all the coordination. Who else was involved that you had to coordinate with, and were you able to meet them directly, or was it all long distance?
Most of it was long distance, and there was a lot of phone calls. Like, I'd never spent so many hours on a phone just like trying to explain what I was doing, and then there were emails back and forth, and it was I'm going to say this, it was like a part-time job in some ways, because it was a huge responsibility, but it didn't feel like one. Like, I never viewed it as like an obligation or anything like that. And so there was a lot of back and forth in that way. And sometimes sometimes there were people that were living in different countries helping with these things. And so you'd forget that there was a time change. So you'd send an email that was like vital. Like, I remember there were pages that I would edit and I would send, and I'd just be waiting. And it's like, an hour you're waiting and you're like, okay. And then like another hour would go by and you'd be like, oh crap, did I mess something up? And then like a day later, like at 2 a.m, you'd get a response and you'd check it the next morning and everything would be fine. But it was just that, it was definitely a very unique experience for sure.
Yeah. Wow. And the pictures that you already touched on, that Michael wanted really high quality pictures. They're amazing. How many pictures did you start off with, and how was it determined which pictures would be in the book? And did Michael bring much of his own material from his own archives to the project?
Yeah, so the photos were his sole discretion, and it was something that he really wanted. Like even the things like the layout of the book itself, he definitely had a hand in, because there were pages that had some of his specific thoughts that he wanted to share with the world, and those were really important to him. And same thing with some of the interview. Like the interviews went longer than what was published in the book, but it was like the interviews went longer. But again, I'm not saying that he was trying to control the book, but he had a say in what parts of the interview were used in the book. And like that was, I think that comes across in the book, because each interview is different. Like it's not like there's a lot of things touching on the same topic, because it'd be easy for some of the people that worked on Thriller in different capacities to share kind of similar stories about their experiences. And getting to talk to someone like John Landis, who he'll talk your ear off, but and he's a really sweet guy, but it's like you have to kind of pick the certain parts of it, and Michael definitely had a say in that. And as far as the photos themselves, a lot of those, as far as I know, were from his archives. And I don't honestly think, I mean, there may have been some from other sources. Like I knew the promotional stuff from, like they had a promotional shot from I think one of the Pepsi commercials, or I'd have to look in the book again, but there was a lizard, and there was a promotional photo. And so we had to get clearances for those things to be in the book. But that was hard to do.
Yeah, in the 2008, the ones about the new stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This one.
Right. So we had to get clearances for those things. And then there were some photos of like some official merchandise that weren't from Michael's own personal photos, but a lot of those were. And with that, the book that came out in 2006, I think it was called My Photo World. I can't remember.
My World. He wrote about it.
Yeah, it had photos. It had some of the photos, I think, were from the history booklet too. So, and a lot of those came from Michael directly as well. So, but yeah, and there's some really unique photos in the book for sure. It was neat as a fan to get layouts of pages and be proofing them, and then you just see a photo you hadn't seen, and it was just really cool, especially the ones that were full pages of images from like the Victory Tour and things like that. It was incredible.
I'm trying to bring them up as we talk. This is for people who haven't got the book yet, this is one of all the original merchandise from 1983.
Yeah.
When it went Michael Mania, and the stamps from St. Vincent, that sort of thing. And it's fantastic.
I love this too, from the rehearsals of Motown 25. I thought that was really cool. And that's that's not something that I've ever seen in any other book. So it seems to have like quite a lot of exclusive material, particularly photos.
Oh yeah.
And Emma, I found out something new from reading the book about the rehearsal. I didn't realize that Michael actually framed all the shots of himself. He directed it, in the rehearsal. He told the cameraman where to go. I never knew that. How many times we watch Motown 25 and we never give him credit for that bit. But I suppose a dancer would have to tell the cameraman where to go. You need to be there. And there's the Victory pit. Are these the ones that you were talking about for the Victory? Yeah,
and there's some of him wearing like a black fedora that just look like you could, I mean, if you wanted to tear the book up, you could just frame them as photos on your wall. Like they look incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Actually, Richard's commented to say that the stamps visuals come from his website.
Oh, wow.
So that's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So back to these. I'm trying to, those ones. Okay, amazing. So this next question was submitted by Shari, one of our moderators. She loves the handwritten notes and all the lyrics. She loves that part of the book. It's so personal and special. But she wanted to ask you, whose idea was it to include the little note that we lots of us know now and cherish, but the one that says, "I took one ink pin instead of pen. So she wants to know who did Michael say, yeah, put that in, or was that somebody else? I'm trying to find it for people.
Yeah. So a lot of the photographs that were in there, they were his ideas because he really wanted there to be a sense of what it was like working in the studio. There's a photograph in the book of the Michael with the tiger cub.
Yeah.
And so originally that photo was just going to be in the book by itself and just on its own. So if I remember right, that picture, there was a picture of the tiger grown up at the end of the book, and it looks incredible. Yeah. So originally, if I remember right, that was originally going to be, there was a drawing in the original Thriller album, which Michael had. He was like him and Paul McCartney. It was a drawing he did, and they were both like pulling on a girl, and she had a really big heart. And it was going to take, it was going to clip Michael's part of it and have the heart be like the heart was going to be kind of reimagined, and it was going to look like it was Michael holding a heart, sort of, so to speak. And so, but as the book kind of went on and got developed further, it was like that became something else that they were able to develop like within the images, and it just really came together really nicely. And so I'm sure we can get into this a bit later, but Michael was real meticulous about a lot of things in the book, and not just things like, even it wouldn't have been in the book if he didn't want it there, period. So
he liked the pin note.
Yeah, and he really wanted the concept to be in some of those pages. It's like having a time capsule for Thriller and getting the fans to see what it was like to make it. Same thing with some of the interview questions that were geared towards some of the people, like Rod Temperton and even John Landis. Like, what was it like at that time? What do you remember? Like trying to get them, like, to have a time machine essentially to go back in time to that. So.
Yeah, and just before we move on, are you confirming that is little William the tiger grown up?
I am pretty sure. Like, don't quote me on that, but I am pretty sure it is, because I remember getting some emails back and forth, and I do remember one of the emails saying he turned out beautifully. So I'm pretty sure it is, but I mean, I'm not sure like 100%, but.
Well, if it is, then that's just some more examples of Michael's meticulous nature and the meaning behind everything he thinks about, isn't it? Wow. Okay, so Sherry, yes, he would have had to agree to the little note. Okay, Emma, over to you.
Before I ask this question, I was going to save this till the end, but because we've spoken about Little William, I wanted to actually share my favourite part of the whole book, which was the description. Zimmerman talked about the photo shoot, and basically that Michael sort of photo shoot, and he was really shy around other adults and people that he didn't know. And then they brought this tiger in, and they said like his whole demeanor just changed, and he was just so at ease with this tiger. And then sort of, I guess, reciprocating that, the tiger was completely at ease with Michael. And by the end of the photo shoot, they just had this amazing relationship. So you can believe that he probably would have, kept up to date with how the tiger was doing. And, that's exactly what Michael would have done. That tiger would not have just been a proper photo shoot. That would have been something that within however long it took, a couple of hours or whatever, he would have completely bonded with that animal and built a relationship with him, and kind of carried that relationship on. So I really, really did love that story, and I think that story is really symbolic of Michael, and it gives a really good insight into who he was. And I find that there's a lot of questions about, was Michael really that shy, and was it all an act stuff? But you do hear these sort of things time and time again. He was uncomfortable around these adults who he didn't know, but then you bring an animal in, and he was just completely, natural. And yeah, I really loved that story.
Yeah.
So Jason, a lot of people were interviewed in the book, but were they interviewed for the book, or were they interviews kind of sourced elsewhere, or were they exclusive interviews for that book?
Yeah, they were exclusive whenever they could be. There was a deadline towards the end where some of them had to be rescheduled, and I know there were like a few that were taken from interviews they had done previously, but we tried to get as many interviews as we could, and Michael was real specific about who he wanted interviewed for the book. So if there was someone that was interviewed that might seem kind of random, there was a reason why he wanted them there. And it was all done under his direction for sure. But yeah, I'd say the majority of those interviews were definitely new. I'm struggling to remember which. There may have been, if I remember right, there may have been one. I'd have to, let me try and maybe go through it, but there was like one that, if I remember right, I'm pretty sure it was sourced from somewhere else. But yeah, the majority of these were done for the book itself, definitely.
I think Richard contributed the Matt Forger one, didn't he?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because there was a handful of people that helped with this book, definitely, and in different capacities for sure. I loved. Oh gosh, there was. It was really cool because I've never met Richard, but I got to message him on Facebook. It was probably a few years after Michael passed away, and it meant a lot to me that I sent him a message, but I wasn't sure if he'd make the Thriller 25 book connection. And so he wrote back something like, "Hey, Thriller 25 oneer," or something like that. And it was like, oh, wow. It meant a lot that he put two and two together, that like he recognized me and stuff. So yeah, it's I still think of myself as a fan, even getting to have like a great opportunity to work on this book like that. At the end of the day, I'd really just see myself as a fan that just really got lucky, honestly.
Oh, yeah. That's lovely. Yeah, Richard sent you a message a bit further back in. Sorry, Emma. I just found Richard's message that he just shouted out. It was congrats, Jason, for being on that crazy journey too. So he's down memory lane too tonight, I think.
I love it.
Jason, I was just going to ask if you managed to source any of the interviews. So were you able to conduct any of the interviews yourself, or do you know who did conduct any of the other interviews for the book?
So portions of John Landis's interview I got to do was huge for me, because doing one like that, it's not that I didn't know John Landis's work, especially as I got older, but when I was 8, 9, and 10, my world like rose, and the sun set and rose by Michael Jackson, right? So I just always knew him as the guy who directed Thriller and the guy who directed Black and White, and anything else was just like whatever. But so and it was really incredible. I was kind of starstruck getting to talk to him, and I will say that for me, the interviews that went the easiest were people like Tamara from Billboard. She was really sweet. But for me, it was more like she could relate to me, as she was a fan during the Thriller era. And even though I became a fan during like the Dangerous album, like there was that commonality of like, we were both fans through different eras of Michael's career. And so I didn't feel it wasn't like, oh my God, you're that guy that I watched on Making a Thriller 500 times till I broke my VHS. Like, so that was, they were different experiences, but I definitely felt more comfortable with somebody that I didn't have that kind of almost like fan feeling. Like, it was hard for me not to ask for John Landis's autograph, to be honest with you, but I didn't. But it was tough. Like, I was like, I wish I would have, but maybe he'll see this. Who knows?
My favorite part of that interview was when he talks about the premiere, and it was star-studded, and they all cheered and wanted it to go on straight away again, to watch it all again straight away. And Eddie Murphy was there, saying, show the goddamn thing again. And then everyone watched it again. That's amazing. I never knew that part about it.
And the thing about talking to somebody like John Landis is like he can talk your ear off. And so a lot of the things he'll share, it's like I'd heard him say like in other interviews over the years, and it was just really neat to get to hear him like, you know, directly from him. But at the same time, it was definitely, I mean, there was a lot of that interview that didn't even make it in the book. But and there was also something too that I figure I might as well point out and bringing that up is like, if you watch like media interviews with somebody like him, it's like they'll kind of cut and paste stuff. And it's like, there was one interview that John Landis did. And it was like, he was crying about like when Michael Jackson passed away, and it was kind of edited in such a way that it was like, it still took some, it's like some fans, I remember watching that interview and then like on YouTube and then seeing some of the fans react and go like, oh, he's kind of rude. And I'm like, I don't think people realize that you're not getting the full like soup to nut interview with like this show. You're getting like a little clip of it and you're making your opinions on him based on that. But I mean, like I don't think he would have been crying if Michael's death didn't impact him. But also when Michael was alive, there was a lawsuit going on about Thriller with John Landis, and there was talk of it. I can't remember which, but he still took time to do this book. So like, I mean, for me, I just kind of had to step back and even with the book, it's like, I knew that there were more interview questions asked of him and they didn't make this whole book. So it really changed a lot of my perspective on just how like media put stuff together and everything. And even with official stuff, that it's not like certain things were left out that like, oh, those can't be in the book, but it was too long. Like we didn't have the page count to have John Landis's interview last like 5 or 6 pages. So.
Wow.
And did Michael share any sort of personal memories, like personally with you, from his time working on Thriller while you were kind of making the book?
Yeah, so I got to meet J. Randy Taraborelli in 2005, and it was really neat. And I've stayed in touch with him. And there's kind of this like thought that Michael was always kind of chasing Thriller to outdo it, and definitely getting his perspective changed somewhere along the way, because with this book, it was full stop. I want to honor that era of my career. And it was like, I want the fans to be able to that part of my career, but also, and see what I'm looking to do for the future as far as my hopes for them, but also that I want them to be able to have as much of a time capsule of that time as they can. And there was actually, so around the time the book came out, there was actually going to be a Bad 25 book similar to this. The publishing company that put it together, there was already a contract drawn up to do it, and Michael was really excited to have it done. And then there was also going to be another book, which shortly after Michael passed away, it was, so in 2003, Michael was involved in a lot of different projects, doing like mock-ups for theme parks and things like that. And he still had a lot of illustrations of like his visions for like what those would be, as well as like poetry and things he was working on. I think it was from 2003, like 2002 to 2003, whenever he got the key to the city in Las Vegas. And so I want to say it was 2003. And so there was going to be a book chronicling that, and it was going to be to try to kickstart some of those things to kind of will them back into life. And I think the book, if I remember right, it was called like My Time in Vegas or something like that, or one more chance. I can't remember, but it actually showed up on Amazon like 2 days before Michael passed away as being like a book you could pre-order. And then he passed away, and the project was never developed any further than that. And there's been stuff that that was talked about being done and just never came to fruition for whatever reason. But that was one of those things. And I actually personally got a phone call from a fan that, I don't know how Amazon gave them my number, but they got my number somehow, and they called me and they said, I'm just trying to track down anybody that knows anything about this book. And I was like, how did you get my number? Goodness, like it was my cell phone. And I was like, how on earth? And like, I had to break them the news, like, I don't think this book's going to happen anymore. But I'm sad too, because it was, I mean, say what you will about R. Kelly now, but he had a lot of things to say about working with Michael Jackson and how much he admired him and respected him as an artist. And it's like, I realize, given the culture now, it's like it's totally different than when it was in 2009. But just to have somebody that was that renowned as an R&B singer saying like, hey, somebody like Michael Jackson really inspired me, it was still really neat to get to know that. And I'm sad in some ways that book never came out, because these were all things that Michael wanted. But there's been some really amazing things. So, take it for what it is. And I'm really thrilled that the Thriller book has had so many different editions come out over the years. And it seemed like after Michael passed, that second edition with just the book itself, it got reprinted again, I think in like 2010. And I was just thrilled. Like I was really pleased. And I know that that's what Michael wanted, because he was really involved in so many aspects of this book, things that I didn't even, like, as a fan, I would have assumed, oh, well, he probably had his hands on the photos and the text and everything. But we can talk in a little bit, but there was even like the contracts for the book. He was like, I expect this and I want that. And it was like, wow, like you don't think about those kind of things, so.
Wow. So just go. So Emma is going to be having a look to see what questions are coming in from everyone watching. So if she's like looking very studious, looking down, taking notes, that's what she's doing. Okay. I just want to read something that's come up while you were talking then, because Richard Lecoq's confirming that it was called the One More Chance photo book.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I couldn't remember.
And he said that sadly, because obviously Michael's passing, the estate stopped the project. So, and Darina Hearn, she's saying that yes, the Key to Vegas ceremony was October 2003. So right. You can always rely on Michael Jackson fans to give us all the confirmation we need as they're listening. Thank you, everyone. So, do you have a favorite section or a favorite photo, favorite picture, favorite interview from the book? And do you know if Michael had a favorite interview, which one he was, really pleased, stoked about?
I know he was really thrilled to get as many people that helped contribute to the album itself. Rod Temperton was huge. He really was wanting that to definitely be a part of the book. And same thing with John Landis. John even mentioned too that John Landis mentioned that him and Michael had talked about collaborating in the future, and like that they were just kind of waiting for a certain project to come about to happen. And so it was, and I'm not trying to bring the mood down, but it was definitely really sad in a lot of ways when Michael passed, for sure. But just like for what could have been, that aspect of it. But for me, my favorite part of it was, I would say, the fun parts of the book, the things that make me smile, like the note that we talked about earlier, that stuff I love. I loved anytime I'd be like in charge of coming up with interview questions, I try to keep them as light and as fun as I could, just because I want my what I was trying to do as far as my contributions was to make it fun. I'm really immensely proud of the bookmark thing, just because I remember probably when I was like 16 or 17, going to a bookstore and I'd see like books about Star Wars and all this stuff, and they'd have these really neat things included with them. And I'd always like rack my brain, like, why aren't there Michael Jackson books with stuff like this? So I mentioned that, and that was something they were like, well, if you want to develop that further, like, Michael would love that. And then when he saw it, I have somewhere in it's probably in storage, but I have a signed bookmark, which means the world to me, because I'm like, I really, like, this was something that I conceptually did, and the person I admired for so long, like, loved it. And so that meant a lot to me. And I think just seeing it as a whole, like it having an ISBN number, I'm somebody that like would like to be an author one day, and seeing that like this is an official product that Michael, has had his hand in and had his name on, and was proud to have out, but also that as far as it being a book, it's a legitimate book. Like it, you could check it out at a library somewhere. So, and that was huge for me. I wanted to be involved with that, and that meant a lot to me. It really did.
Yeah, thank you. Emma, did you have a favorite photo or section?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I already mentioned my favorite section was the story with the tiger. Favorite photo, there's just way too many. So many amazing photos that I haven't seen before. Really love the victory ones that have been mentioned. And like I said, I really liked that sort of insight into the rehearsals of Motown 25. I think that's a real little exclusive snippet there. One of the things that I was talking to Jeanette about actually earlier today, and one of the things that I didn't realise was, you know, that Thriller, the album, the kind of sales were dipping until Mike did the Motown 25 performance. And so when you really consider the impact of that, I mean, essentially, Thriller would not have been the album that it ended up being if it wasn't for that performance. And until I sort of read that in the book, I don't think I mean, we all love that performance, and absolutely it's gone in history as one of the best. But when you actually read that it affected sales really to such an extent that it became the best-selling album of all time, and when you think about the potential consequences of that performance not happening, I mean, listen, Thriller never would have done badly, but you know, you really get a sense of just the magnitude of that performance and the significance of that performance on the ultimate success of Thriller. And yeah, I think it's these kind of little details that, you know, you sort of don't previously know, that books like this, you know, you get that information and you start to see things, even after being a fan for, you know, 20, 30, 40 years, you're constantly taking away something that you didn't know, and it allows you again to see a performance in a different way, a song in a different way, Michael in a different way. So yeah, I think the book's full of little anecdotes and pieces of information like that again just allow us fans to again appreciate the songs, the performances, the man in a way that we haven't previously been able to do. So thank you for all your hard work on it.
Oh, the other thing, Emma, that we were astounded by when we discovered it was that when we read I think it's page 60, it's originally published in the Los Angeles Times on just after the Grammy Awards, where Michael swept the board. So it's this page here. And when we read it, we thought, hang on a minute, and we had to go and Google some dates, because it turns out that on the same stage 4 weeks before was when the Pepsi burn happened, on the same stage 4 weeks before the Grammys. And like, obviously we know these stories, we've been thinking about them all our lives as fans, but to, you know, this book gives you a real sense of that time, because I didn't appreciate that time scale. That is astounding. He looks on top of the world, magnificent king of pop in the Grammys, but 4 weeks before, it's incredible. So yeah, more appreciation for the detail and the chronology that the book gives us. Right, we're going to go back to William the Tiger now, because so where is my question on William the Tiger? Right, yeah. So we were going to ask you about the tiger. Obviously, we talked about it earlier on. So we're going to ask you about the significance of it. But then we found a tiny little photograph of a note that Michael had written on page 123 for all the nerds who are listening. And it's a handwritten note that says, a tiger is kind and powerful and represents love to me. So Michael wrote that. So the question we want to ask you now is, did Michael expand on his ideas about the tiger to you, especially when he wanted to include the poem by William Blake on the last page?
No, not specifically that, but I will say that, like, everything, and I know I've said it before, but it's the truth, everything in this book was something that Michael wanted in the book for a real deliberate reason. And so what I mean, like I think that what's worth noting is like just the level of detail that was given to the book by not just like me, but by Michael himself. So one of the things I wanted to show too was, so this is a contract. I'll try to get it as close to the camera as I can here. Sorry if it's kind of blurry. And I'll read some excerpts of it, but and maybe this will give some context as to how involved Michael was. And I realize this might be deep diving something like a tiger question, but it's like, again, everything in that book was something that Michael wanted. So this says, this is to clarify the merchandising situation. I've ordered you to manufacture a book to commemorate the 25th anniversary of my album Thriller, so I can see shops filled with my legacy, not just in the United States, but all over the world. And then, so I'm going to skip down to the stuff too. It says, I further understand that you have been given a contract that you feel may not be sufficient to achieve the goals I set. In case such situations occur, I want you to inform me immediately, and I will adjust your contract accordingly. Until then, please operate under the existing agreement and kindly report to me every quarter in written format. And this was dated February of 2008 in Las Vegas, if I'm reading that right. Yeah. So like even things like making sure that there were copies available of this book were things that were important to Michael. So again, like something like that poem, I'm sure there was something that he wanted to convey with that. And even though he didn't like explicitly say, this is what's important to me, rest assured, like it wouldn't have passed the test of it making the book if it wasn't something that he was okay with or something he wanted.
Yeah. So we'll take from that then that the poem by William Blake, maybe that's something that we could all share on the book club afterwards, in our discussions, and just have a reflect on the poem and what it means, what it could mean in relation to the project, what Thriller did for, not just Michael's legacy, but, pop music, bringing people closer around the world because it united so many people. It was an international success. Unlike a lot of, kind of Western pop music before that, it was very much, Europe and the US, but this was literally global. But also, for Black people too, Thriller, marked a change in their access, rightly so, to the music industry and all of that. So, maybe we could reflect on the poem, about the idea of the symbolism of the tiger, and just have a bit of a discussion about that, over the next few weeks following this interview, in Michael's name. Thank you, Jason. Okay, so obviously Michael would have had a final say on the content of the book, and did you speak to him directly about how he felt about the final one as it went off to print?
So I can a few things. So the first is, and I'm not pulling this out to like rub it in, but so this was a note that Michael wrote to me, and this was the first edition of it, and I'll read it, but it says, thanks for all of your help and support making this book such a success. So, and I wasn't there in Las Vegas the night that that he got the first printed copies, but I got emails, I got phone calls from people that were with him, and they said like, and he was giving like people that would come see him that he knew, he would give copies to that night, because he was given like I think a handful of copies, like 12 of what they were going to look like, and he was so thrilled. Like they said he was, and I'll never forget, they said he was smiling ear to ear, and like I was like, wow, like that made me really feel good that he was really pleased with it, and like because he had such high standards, and so just to know that it cleared the bar as far as what he envisioned for it. It really, I was like, okay, like something really worked here. And the other thing was, I just tried to pull some stuff out of storage that I thought would be relevant to this conversation. And so around the time Thriller 25 came out, Michael really wanted the book to also convey that Thriller wasn't just a music video, but it was a short film, as he referred to it. But he even would say it was a horror short film because he loved horror movies. And so this was a magazine that came out, I think it was in 2008. And if somebody really wants to track one down, yeah, it's October 2008. It's Whorehound Magazine, issue 13. But so Halloween was Michael Jackson's favorite holiday, or at least one of them. And so this was something, and he wrote like Happy Halloween on this. And it was something that was coordinated for him. And he was really just excited to have Thriller be on the cover of a magazine all these years later, and it be a horror movie magazine specifically. Yeah. There was a lot of things that, again, around this time, like it was definitely different than maybe how Michael felt about it, 10 years, 20 years prior to that, at that point. So it's definitely like kind of worth re-examining some of the things that were released around that time and that were official products for Thriller, especially.
Yeah,
because I think the context changed a bit.
Yeah, that leads me on to the next question. It's actually a question from Tammy, one of our admin. She says that it's pretty incredible that all the celebrations around Thriller's 25th anniversary in 2008, after going through the 2005 trial, to have Pepsi sponsor the Sobe Life Water commercial during the Super Bowl with the Lizards and Naomi Campbell doing the Thriller dance, all the merchandise, the Thriller 25 album, and people recognizing his achievements, as you referred to, and seeing all that celebration. She asks, how did Michael seem to be taking in all this global attention and love after everything that happened?
I mean, he was really thrilled with the book itself, but also it was really important to him to have something in the book chronicling what was going on to commemorate Thriller itself in the book. That's kind of a weird thing to say, but so the more modern things that were happening around Thriller, he really wanted mentioned for sure. So he was definitely really pleased with those things. And I know there were talking some, like in some different like things that were saying like Michael would have been more involved, and I can't really speak to that, but I do know that everything that was, put out, he was definitely happy about. And the things that it's like you said, like he went through the trial was in 2005 was when he was acquitted. And then like, just, 3 years later to be able to have him be this excited about his career and his past, it made me feel good to be able to bring something to the table for him to focus on rather than just, the hard times that were fairly recent at that point in his life, so, and he definitely was excited about it for sure. You don't oversee every detail over something you really, couldn't care about. So.
Absolutely. Thank you. Emma, did you have a question?
Yeah, so Darina's asked, were you and Stroke or Michael aware of the fan reactions to both the book and the Thriller 25 album being released? How did you guys kind of sense that the feeling was from the fan community about these projects?
Well, there was nothing like the Thriller 25 book at the time it was released. There were calendars, there were posters, there were T-shirts, but there was nothing really like it. It was something that was Michael's vision, but it was also very unique in that sense. And so I have other contracts and stuff where it was like there was a bit of hesitancy as far as like, is this going to be an achievable goal? And like when I got involved, it was something that the wheels were already in motion, but I didn't know, I wasn't sure, like, is this going to happen? And so the response at that point was it was met really well. And fans really took to the book. I know after Michael passed, the book would list on eBay, and some people would like make like $400 or $500 for a book, and I just blew me away. Like I was like, what? Like they really wanted, especially at that time, like anything that was official that Michael had his hand in, and I totally get it. And I think that the other thing worth noting is that when the book came out, I mean, it was re-released at different points, but when the book first came out, there was other Thriller 25 promotional stuff going on, and even though the book was a bit late as far as coinciding with the actual album re-release, it was something that it was all kind of seen as like, this is going to help promote that album too, and Michael was really aware of that. Same thing with why he approved posters that had the Thriller 25 logo. He really wanted to remind people of the legacy of that album. And the book really kind of, it extended that in a lot of ways, but everything at that time, and I'm pretty sure it was leading up till This Is It a year later, those were the things that Michael was most focused on. And yeah, there were other ideas for things to come, but this was the last official thing that he got really, he had complete control over, but that he was really excited about, like that you felt like something's happening here.
Yeah, Tammy's written that it's a beautiful thing that he was celebrated like this a year before he passed. And that ties into a nice question from Angie that we had earlier on that I'll raise now. And she wanted to know whether either he mentioned, expressed, or whether you ever got the sense he wanted to complete a project like this for his children, you know, to kind of, for them to, I guess, kind of see that legacy in that kind of form.
Right. Yeah, it was definitely meant as a time capsule for the fans, for sure. But I mean, everything that Michael did after he had his kids, like they were in mind with things. Even if you look at the portion, like it's towards the end of the book where Michael references a poem that he wants the world to kind of, this is my hopes for I think it was for the new year or for the future. But the first people he wanted thanked on that page, it was high up there, were his kids and his family. And yeah.
And there was another question from Betty Lou earlier, which I raised now as well. And she asked if you still had any of Michael's notes, like sort of any handwritten notes or personal messages to you about what he wanted in the book. Do you have any of those still?
Oh yeah. So yeah, I have a lot of those in storage. A lot of like his personal instructions. And yeah, I do, for sure. Those are things for me that at some point I'll pull out and I'll try to like share them, but I have them in storage right now, and I just have never made it a point. And I definitely will, but there's a lot of things that Michael wrote. I tried to keep a few things like where I know where they are, but by and large, yeah, I have a whole I have a tote in storage of like Thriller 25 related stuff, and they were notes from Michael, as well as I have some audio clips from some of the interviews and like some of the questions that I was like, I think I want to ask this, because for me, I just wanted to be able to remember that. Being in some small way a part of Michael's career and his legacy, which definitely inspired me. So, yeah.
And was it, I mean, obviously you've spoken about the book itself being definitely coming from Michael. That was something that he wanted to do. But kind of celebrating Thriller and having the Thriller 25 project in its entirety with the you know, the album and stuff, did that come from Michael, or was that more kind of a Sony pushing thing?
I know that it was something that was really important to him, because he mentioned with something like the book specifically that he really wanted to have a time capsule for working on the album. I'm not sure if the Thriller 25 album was something that Sony contractually wanted him to do or had him doing, but it was something he was definitely supportive of doing because there were no contracts that said you have to do this book, you have to approve these posters or anything relating to it. So and I remember, like I said earlier, I remember reading through contracts that said like, we hope that you will do X, Y, and Z for this book, and the companies that were involved were thrilled to do it. But that started from Michael's own discretion, so it wasn't like it was an obligation that he had to fulfill. So I'm not sure really about the album itself.
But as you said, if he wasn't contracted by, to doing it, then it had to come from him wanting to do it, even if it wasn't maybe his initial idea. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. As far as the book and the posters for Thriller 25, those were things he really wanted to see through. Even the paper quality, there was a Thriller 25 poster I mentioned earlier. Even the paper quality on that, he was really meticulous. Like, it needs to be this grade paper. It needs to be this thick. There were some posters that came out back in 2005 from his website, MJ Source. I can't remember the website name now, but I think it was MJJ Source or something. And he was really disappointed that it was a photo from One More Chance that was like a poster. And he was disappointed that the paper quality wasn't thicker. And so he was really always adamant, even with the book, he's like, I want really thick paper. I don't want it to be something that if you move around, you're going to tear. So like, he was definitely really passionate about the book and all the other stuff that came with it, for sure.
And thank God that he was, because now we have it. It's something else, that we have to remember his legacy and celebrate him. So that's great. So my next question is, what's your fondest memory from working with Michael? Obviously, you've mentioned loads of amazing opportunities, experiences, anecdotes, but if you kind of had to choose your fondest memory or your favorite part of this project and of working with Michael, what's the one thing that really stands out for you?
I think getting to do some of the interviews and walk, I don't know if it was an ego thing for me, blame it on being like early 20s and stupid, but like for me, it was having that feeling of getting to talk to these people and being able to say, like, I'm working for Michael Jackson, and like it wasn't met with any hesitancy or any like, like they all knew, like, okay, and like it was being treated really seriously. For me, that meant the world to me, because I was doing something that I wanted to do for as far back as I could remember. And it was like, I would think back to people that would go, oh, that's such a silly ambition. And it's like, well, now I'm really doing it. So here we are. And just the legitimacy of knowing that this is something in some small way that, and, unfortunately I had no way of knowing at the time that this would be one of the last things Michael had a hand in. But like, in that context, it's like, it really, it means that much more. But at the time, I was just thrilled to be involved in it. And even when I look back, I just think back to knowing that I had the full support of somebody that I admired so much, and that they really stood behind what I was doing. Any kind of note I would get from him as far as like this, like, I want this, or this is great. Things like hearing like the bookmark and things like that, how he felt about it, that really made my heart happy. And I don't know that I could pick just one, but there was a handful of things like that that really I'll never forget, honestly. Like, those will always stay with me. And I just really am thankful, especially now, because like at the time I always thought, oh, well, there's plans for these other projects, and I definitely want to be involved in them. And, obviously they didn't come to pass, but I'm really thankful for the ones that did, definitely.
Yeah. And what did you learn about Michael, and what did you learn from Michael?
Definitely definitely that you can see something through that's your own, like something that you really want, no matter the obstacles, because there were multiple things that had to happen for something like this book to come to pass, multiple people that had to be involved, that Michael had a hand in choosing, and lots of decisions that had to be made, that it could be easy and step back and go, this is overwhelming. Like, I've got other commitments to do. I have, like, it would be easy to just say, forget this. But with every decision, it was like there were 5 more things that had to be figured out. And knowing that Michael was spearheading this, it was really gratifying in a lot of ways. And so I learned that I think you have to kind of let your vision or your dreams, whatever you want to call it, like kick open the door sometimes. Even if you're unsure if it's going to work out, you still have to try, and you have to be willing to try. And that was something that, getting to work for Michael Jackson, that was something that I would say all day long, to anybody, like, just, try. And even if you're afraid, like, that it won't work, even if you're uncertain, it's better to try and give it your all and be meticulous. Like, it's okay to take full stock in something. Like, when I look back at the book, I'm like, there were things that Michael himself, or that other people that were involved with the book, even, that because they gave it their all, it made for a better product, and it made for something that now, without Michael here, it made for something that fans can hold on to, and not just remember Thriller, but remember the man who made Thriller. And I don't think that was his intention, certainly, but I'm glad that it was something he was proud of, and it was definitely finished. Like, it wasn't something that was like, oh, we were 90% the way there, but it got completed, and that was all because of his vision for it. And I definitely learned that, because it's hard sometimes to stay motivated, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think as well, it's about having that mindset and that belief. And you said that from quite young, you always wanted to, and B, believed that one day you would work for Michael Jackson. And who would ever kind of believe that would happen for themselves? But because you had that belief and that mindset, and it wasn't just something that you wished would happen, you sort of actively kind of worked your way towards that, and it did happen. So it's such a success story, I guess, as a fan. Angie mentioned, you were talking about leaving something behind for the fans, and Angie said earlier on that she thinks that as a collector himself, then Michael, if otherwise, he knew the enjoyment to fans, creating something like this. He knew what it would mean to fans to have something like this to treasure and to look back on. And I have one final member question, and then I'll hand back over to Jeanette. This is also from Angie. She wondered if you went on to work on future projects, or did you become an author of other books?
Well, so after Thriller 25, there were some other things I was doing for Michael before he passed away. One of the things I was doing that he was getting ready to have some official T-shirts printed, and he didn't want anything on eBay or Amazon that were unofficial. And so there was like a priority list, and it was like, anything that's derogatory or negative, I don't want those available. And so he drafted himself a cease and desist letter. Like, he didn't go to a lawyer, he drafted it up, and then he had a lawyer approve it. And then I got a copy of it. I have it somewhere. And it was like that level of commitment to what he wanted to do. And so I was going through on eBay, messaging people, and I had a scan of the letter it was uploaded to his official website, and I was able to, it was before eBay had done something where now if you try to message people on eBay, you can't send a link, it won't let you. But I had to be creative with how I could send it, but I would say, like, this is an official document, please read and review this. And so I was doing that up until like about 2 weeks before he passed away. And and it was really strange to me because on Michael's MySpace, if we can all look back to those days for a minute, it was strange to me because I remember seeing my MySpace profile go up on Michael's friends list, like in his top 20 or whatever. And I was like, wow, that's really something. And it would keep kind of going higher throughout the weeks after the book came out. And I don't know who was actually like updating it as far as uploading music to it, but just being a part of that in some way, that really made me like, oh my gosh, that was incredible. And like I said from day one, I want to write a book, and I'm actually working on it right now. It's a novel, so I'm trying to check off all these boxes here. So, but yeah, getting to reminisce about the book's really great. I love it. I love it. And anybody that reads it, I hope they enjoy it too, because I know it was made with a lot of love, sure. And it was really Michael's vision from day one.
Oh, thank you. This is our last question for you this evening. What does Michael's legacy mean to you?
So I was never open really about working for Michael Jackson. Like a few people in my life knew about it, and people that would know me personally, I would share it because it was bound to come up, but I never really was that open about it. And the thing was that even after he passed, I maybe told like a few of my friends, but again, like it was never something that I would really just share with like anybody I didn't know. And when I saw leaving Neverland or whatever, and I saw the whole thing with Wade Robson and everything, that really irked me for a lot of reasons, but mainly because I met Wade in 2005, and this was before I worked for Michael Jackson. I had no connection to him at all, okay? But other than being a fan, right? But I remember meeting Wade, and there was a group of fans that were, so you'd have, at this courthouse, you'd have breaks where you could go and you could stand like in the back of the courthouse essentially, and like sometimes lawyers would go and stand, or you could use the bathrooms inside the court, but then you could walk outside. And if you walked outside the front doors of the court, which is where if you watched the trial coverage of it, you'd see Michael go in and leave every day. And it's like, so when he would leave or go in, you'd see all these reporters, and they'd all just kind of huddle around, and they'd be in hotels nearby. And so one of the days I met Wade there, and he was okay, like he was nice. But the thing that stood out to me was he was saying to a group of fans, like there was like 5 or 6 fans standing around, and he was saying, oh, Michael's planning this project, and I don't remember the particulars of it, but it was some project he was planning, and he was like, and he's going to release it really soon. And so if you want, like, it wasn't like he was giving out his email, but he was really like trying to talk up some interest and like try to get people's kind of contact information. And it was real kind of bizarre to me. And I just remember thinking, man, that's strange. And so I didn't really pay much attention to it. And fast forward to when I was working for Michael, I mentioned to David Guest, I remember sending him an email and saying, like, because I emailed him at one point and I said, thank you for helping me with this huge opportunity. If there's any way I can ever repay you, please let me know. And he said, just try to keep Michael's best interests at heart. He has a lot of people that don't. And that was it. And so I thought back to the Wade thing, and it kind of just irked me a little bit. And so I asked some other people that worked with Michael a lot closer than I did about that. And I was like, that just always rubbed me the wrong way. And one of the people said, and they're pretty well known, like amongst Michael Jackson fans, I'm not going to name a name or anything, I'm not trying to name drop, but the fact that somebody that knew Michael really closely said to me that about Wade, they said, he lies a lot, and he ultimately is just trying to get money. And this was before Leaving with Neverland even came out.
Before.
It just really, like, when I saw that, I went on my Facebook and I was just so angry. And like, I wanted to share that because it's something small, but at the same time, it spoke to like Wade's character and just the nature of that whole thing. And it bothered me a lot because it totally went against the person that I would say Michael was. Like, and I hated it that it was just so blindly accepted. And so, and me being naive, I didn't realize that, I mean, I'm friends with Michael Jackson fans, but I didn't realize that it would get tweeted out and shared. And I didn't mind, like, I didn't care, but I just didn't realize that. And I'm glad it did, because in a lot of ways, if I can be in a voice in some small way to remind people of who Michael really was and change the conversation from something that I don't believe, like in my heart, I'm like, there is no way that's true. Like, I'm more than happy to do it. And I almost felt like it was like I should do it, because I didn't like the way that narrative was done. And I didn't like that was something that got so much attention. And I mean, for me, when I think of Michael Jackson, the first word that comes to my mind is generous. And that's something that a lot of people, I think, forget with the way the media took that documentary. And so my hope is for the future that it definitely shifts back, because he was really one of the most generous people I've ever, A, gotten to work for, but B, just gotten to be a part of his life in some small way. I could sense the generosity from, and I have personal stories about that too, but it's like, I can't stress that enough. And that's the one thing, all the music, all the music videos, everything, all his achievements for his career. Yeah, those meant a lot to me. His art means a lot to me still to this day, and it always will. But that pales in comparison to his generosity. And it's like, you have so many wonderful things he did for so many people, and they're not talked about. And I really think they should be. And I don't just mean like charities, like that's a whole other conversation. But for people like me, like, that changed the course of my life. And it was really small, but probably for him, but like it meant the world to me. And so I'm always going to try to keep the focus where I think it belongs, you know?
Thank you for sharing that with us. That's really profound. And, you know, the reaction from everybody in the chat, you know, everyone's feeling that too. You know, firstly, from what you said about your own instinct in 2005, meeting Wade, and then seeing that underhand sort of networking going on, when really that wasn't the focus. It was a terrible time. There are appropriate places to talk business projects, and you know, that definitely wasn't one of them. And you know, especially if they were kind of made up as well. But then going on, you know, David Guest, he'd known Michael since they were teenagers, you know, and he was protecting him and all of that. And then the other colleague that you say about, yeah, that's really important for us to have on record, on video, just part of the legacy. Obviously, we want to talk about the books and what they can give us going forward, but actually our main underlying the books are just an excuse to come together, really, aren't they, in many ways, and you know, solidify that legacy that we all know, the legacy of generosity that you talk about, and the way that Michael does change lives, whether you've met him and had that pleasure, worked with him, had that pleasure, or just been a fan from the distance. Through his music, you know, he changed lives. And it's important for us to come together and document this now. And that's what we're doing on these live chats. And we really, really are so grateful to you for coming and sharing, you know, your afternoon with us, our evening for me and Emma, but your afternoon, to do that. And now we've done it, it's there forever for everyone else to look at too. So it's really important.
One more thing too, I don't mean to interrupt you, but in the spirit of generosity, you guys, if you want, so what I'd love to do, I don't know if maybe there can be a post about it somewhere, but if you guys want to post, you know, so there was a question in the book I asked Tamara from Billboard. I asked her, you know, which jacket did you like of Michael Jackson's better, the Beat It jacket or the Thriller jacket? And she answered something. And so my question would be, if you guys want to maybe start a thread or something and just answer your own answer, which one you like better. And I'm more than happy to go through and just pick one at random, and I'll mail you a copy of the Thriller 25 book. My pleasure. So just maybe keep watch the Facebook group or the page, and if you guys don't mind setting that up, like, I'm more than happy to send somebody a copy of it. Absolutely.
That is extremely generous. That's wonderful. Thank you. That's lovely. So just to confirm and repeat for people, Jason said that he will send somebody, a lucky person, a copy of the book. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to do a fair lottery. It's a fun thing. We'll do a post on the book club tonight, this afternoon, whatever it is for you, in the next hour or so. And we'll ask you, which is your favorite jacket, Thriller or Beat It? It's an extremely hard question. I don't know how people are going to choose. So just in the comment section of that post, try and choose one. And then what we'll do, we'll put all of the entrants into a hat, and we'll announce it in the next couple of days. We'll give you more details about that. But Jason, that's so kind. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. You guys are great. Anything I can do.
Emma, do you want to say any last little things?
No, not at all. Just that it's been a real privilege to talk to you this evening, Jason. And thank you for all your hard work with the book and all the hard work with, maintaining Michael's legacy, which is what all of this is about. And, you're a big piece of that puzzle. So, yeah, just a huge thank you for joining us this evening.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And good luck with your novel.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
We'll be looking out for it.
Keep us up.
I'll keep you posted.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. And we'll see you soon. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.